The EP Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at theeppodcast.com.
It's the EP Podcast. My name is Chris Lanuti, and this episode and every episode is brought to you by the First National Bank of Evergreen Park, which invests in the Evergreen Park community because they love this area as much as you do. Total Access Checking Account. It's the best deal on the market. You get free ATMs nationwide, any ATM, no matter what the fee is. They put the money back in, making the ATM transaction free anywhere. Plus, you get a $300 bonus with qualifying activities when you open up the account. Great mobile banking tools, award-winning customer service, no overdraft fees. Essentially, you put your money in the bank, they reward you for it, and they don't try to take any of it from you. Stop in and see them today, in person. So many friendly people there. 95th and Pulaski in that iconic building, the First National Bank of Evergreen Park, member FDIC. Sitting down here at the 9-foot homemade oak bar, we're going to have some fun today about something that probably doesn't make you think of fun. The property tax bill comes. In fact, I just finished redoing my property taxes, getting a reduction where I'm basically paying somebody to get it lower, but it still costs me money. It's aggravating. And now you just see it all starting back up again. And one of the big expenses on your property taxes is what goes to the schools. So I figured let's go to the source. And we have a great group that's going to be in here today for the show for something I don't think anybody really talks about. And I'm going to first introduce the Superintendent of District 231, Mike Riordan. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having us, Chris.
This was your idea. You were like, we could talk about this. And I thought that was awesome. And Dr. Jenna Woodland from District 124 was like, yes, let's do this thing. And we're all lined up here.
Yes. Thank you so much for having us, Chris. We are excited to just educate our community a bit more on this topic and make sure they have a further understanding of where their money goes to.
Yeah. I want to know where my money goes to. I mean, life is tough right now.
Yes,
I mean, it's expensive.
Yes.
My gas is bad. My groceries are bad. Mm-hmm. And, I get it that things cost a lot of money, but it's kind of, it's one of those things I don't think people understand, right? First of all, they're like, wait a minute, why are they going up? I don't remember getting richer. And so everybody already has a negative reaction to property taxes. And you also have a group of people here in the village that take advantage of your school, Jenna, and yours, Mike, and they put their kids through that system. And then you have some that are paying for the schools and they don't actually have kids that are in the schools because they make a choice to go somewhere else. So it'll be interesting to kind of learn today how this all goes. And we're going to bring in a couple other guests to sit in the middle of the two of you throughout this episode. And the first person sitting with us is the D124 Board of Education Vice President, Michael Aumiller. How are you?
I'm doing all right, Chris. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, thanks for coming on. Do you guys feel the response from the public that it is a big deal? Do you guys actually, when this thing happens and people see increases, is that something that you notice a reaction, and that's why it's a good idea to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think every community member wants to know where their money goes to in a school district. And first of all, I am just thrilled to be sitting here with D231 to make sure everyone knows that we're in a partnership together. And in Evergreen Park specifically, there's 2 school districts that are really asking the same community members for money. We want to make sure that we provide you examples today of how we're best educating kids with the requests that we have every day, and that is an impact on a community member. And we know and recognize that. And Illinois school finance, although it might be one of my favorite topics and Michael Aumiller's favorite topic, it might not be everyone's favorite topic. So our intention is to just break it down and make it more palatable for everybody.
Is everything property taxes? How do you guys secure the funding? How does a public school secure the funding that they need to operate day to day, year to year?
Yeah, happy to address that question. Generally, the money that comes to public schools is primarily from 3 major sources. I'm gonna start with the smallest and then work up to the largest, portion of those sources. Initially, we have money that comes from the federal government. That only accounts for about 10% of our necessary expenditures. And the federal government will send money to public schools to provide additional supports for kids that come from low-income families or kids that maybe have special needs and need additional supports and so forth. The second source is the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois takes its revenue from income taxes and sales taxes and so forth and distributes them out to all the different public schools throughout the state of Illinois according to a particular formula that they use to determine appropriate, distribution. That counts for about 20% of our overall, needs to operate our schools, which leaves the biggest amount, 70% left, is coming directly from the property owners within the school districts. That's the homeowners, that's the business owners, the corporate, property owners as well. All of those people will contribute property taxes based on their assessed value of their home and so forth to a number of taxing bodies, but no doubt the largest amounts go to the schools. And we have very little control over what we get from the federal or state government. And so there's definitely is a high reliance on the local property taxes that we need to be able to run our schools. The one thing I guess I want to mention in light of what happened this past year, though, is that schools are limited. We can't just unilaterally run up tax bills on people just because we feel like it.
You don't get to walk in and say, we're building a stadium. We want to hike this thing by 20%. You don't get to do that.
There are laws that limit how much schools can grow their property tax collections from year to year. The law requires us to only grow it based on what the consumer price index is. And so when consumer price index is high, like it has been the last few years, we can go up and collect more, but we are capped at 5%. So even when it's over 5%, which it has been, we're limited to 5%. But you don't have to go too far back in history where it was under 1%, and we were only growing the property tax collection by that small amount, and we had to tighten our belts when we were in that situation. And so we have a heavy reliance on property taxes because we only get so much from the state, from the federal government, and that's why property taxes are the way they are in the state of Illinois. But I think we'll touch on this in just a minute. Not everybody's taxes went up the same way, the same rate in this past cycle, and there's some specific, unique reasons of why that happened.
I just want to clarify. So you guys don't get together and say, we want 5%. It's not like you're making a choice. This is just a standard thing that's set by what the consumer price index, which I also don't understand. So can you clarify that and explain to me what that is? Because it sounds catchy, but I don't know what it is.
The consumer price index, often referred to as CPI, is a government-generated statistic that assesses and measures the overall increase in cost of things we purchase in daily life.
Oh, cost of living. Cost of living. Because I was a union president for Cook County 911 dispatchers for like 10 years, and I'd have to go in for a new contract all the time. And one of the things I used to always have to do is look up how much has the cost of living gone up, because it would be part of my argument at the table about the increase that I was asking for. And they never want to give you the cost of living. Like, people slowly get poorer in those negotiations unless you really, really do well in them. It's a difficult thing to do. So that's what that is. Because I think a lot of people would understand that a little bit more. You got a lot of union workers, you got a lot of people that they get their raises based off of cost of living. So this is essentially also cost of living.
That's exactly right. You can look at those two as one and the same, generally, cost of living and CPI, Consumer Price Index, because, schools, we have bills to pay year to year. Our utility bills go up, our labor costs go up, the cost of materials and supplies, all of those costs go up, generally tied to the cost of living. And therefore, as expenses go up, the rate of revenue through property taxes theoretically should be going up at about the same pace.
Okay, that's interesting. The property owner's bill should be limited to that index, but everybody's bill was a little bit different, as Mike just pointed out. So I don't know, Michael, you're here for a reason. You must be an expert on something. I'm going to go to you here and see whether or not you know it. Why were some people's indexes or their increases different from other people in the village?
So there's a couple of different reasons for that. The primary of which is they don't actually do all properties at the same time. So they actually roll it out geographically, and South Cook just drew the short straw and got to be picked on first. It's important to remember that the last time that they did this was supposed to be in 2020, but we had COVID, so they kind of suspended things. So this
could have happened sooner.
This could have happened sooner.
Okay.
And when you think about it, it's almost like there's two assessments that have been baked into the one that we just got, because they froze it in 2020. So this one is the first true reassessment in 6 years. That is the Cook County Assessor's Office that is in control of determining what the values are for
Now
your
I know
houses.
who I'm angry with. I shouldn't be angry with you. I should be angry with them. That's what you're telling me?
Exactly why I name dropped them.
All right, as long as I know who to be angry with.
There you go. You got to point it in the right direction. So there's that factor. And then there's also, I'm sure you've noticed, EP's housing market has been really popping, right? Like houses are going on the market 2 weeks tops, and which is great for homeowners and people that are ready to, cash out, move on. It's our biggest asset
Values
for a
here
lot
are
of us.
huge, right? I mean,
yeah.
like we've had a couple of real estate agents in here recently, and they've talked about how easy it is to sell a home. Like I had one on here, I want to say in the last 3 or 4 months. You can probably find it online. And Laura Kelly. And I asked her, about my house. Like, what if I sold this house? Like, would I have to fix it up? She's like, you don't need to fix up anything. Everybody wants to live in Evergreen Park. So that's the housing market in Evergreen is booming. So you're saying that also has an impact.
It does, because one of the ways that they determine our value is they look at houses nearby that have sold and at what price they sold. So when your neighbor cashes out and does very well, that's great for them. And intrinsically, it's good for you too, right? Having a higher house value makes it easier for you to put your house on the market if you're wanting to do that, or if you're wanting to refinance and get some more equity built into your house. So it can have a lot of values for you too. The flip side to that is basically you're being told your house is worth more because someone else sold. You didn't actually realize any of that money, right? Like you didn't make any money because your neighbors were selling their homes.
They should
but
drop
you're going to
some off
be paying
at
a
the
little
house.
bit of that bill because now they're saying, well, hey, houses in this area went up. I'm making up the numbers, 15%. Your house must have gone up 15%. So that's one of the important things to remember is a hot housing market is great for our community, but we do end up paying a little bit more for that.
And it's kind of a double-edged sword if you think about it. I mean, you guys are constantly making improvements in your schools. You're surrounded on 3 sides by Chicago. You clearly, I don't care if that bothers people in Chicago who listen to the show or not, you clearly have a better product, right? So if you live in this area,
we believe we do.
You clearly have a better product,
Yes.
right? So if you're in this area and you're like, well, I want to live in this area, and you're trying to get an Evergreen, that's why the prices are up. So essentially, you have people that want to get here because the schools are good. You see the cost of housing go up, or the value of people's houses go up. That raises the amount of money that the schools get. The schools get more money to continue to improve. It's like this thing that just keeps rolling is what you're kind of describing.
Exactly. And, I think a good way to think about it is, as Mike mentioned, we are limited by a certain number, CPI or 5%, whichever is lower, I believe, is what we are allowed to tax at. It's like our ceiling. It's important to remember that number is going to fluctuate based on homes, what's selling in the area, but also like the schools need to be able to pay their bills and keep the lights on, but we don't have the ability to save up boatloads of money. So we're really taxing like what we need, right? So our levy came out and we actually did less than we did the year before, right? And I don't want to make it sound like we slashed taxes or anything. It was like less than 1%. But the point is, 2 years ago, we did like 5%, we'll say. And then last year we did like 4.9. Not a huge decrease. And yet the numbers went up by so much.
Right.
And it's kind of similar to, think of it in terms of, let's say I'm paying you, right? You work for me. I pay you $100 a year to do this job, right? We're going to keep the numbers easy. At the end of the year, you got to pay your taxes. Let's say it's 10%. You got to pay $10. Boom, you paid your taxes. Now, let's say you did an awesome job. Next year, I'm going to pay you $200. Nothing changes to the taxes. But at the end of the year, you got to pay $20 in taxes.
Right.
It feels like your taxes went up, and it feels like it's more money going out the door. But really what happened is the denominator just got bigger. The number that you're going to be taxed against got bigger.
You're saying the percentage isn't changing. You're just saying
exactly
everything's worth more. And so now all of a sudden things are going up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so in this example, the assessor's office gave your house a raise. And so the tax rate didn't change, but they're saying you make more now. And so you've got the same percentage, but of a bigger number.
Building relationships, supporting the community, and service. These are the things that Country Financial stands for. They're more than just an office you may pass by as you drive through Evergreen Park. They're neighbors who lend a helping hand and support the fabric of your community, including charitable organizations, sports, financial education, and civic organizations. And since Country is already your neighbor, they want to get together and chat. Call your local Country Financial representative, Mike Thauer, today at 708-425-1559 to talk about the things that are important to you and how he can help you protect them. Our guests remain down here. We're going to get back to them in just a moment. First, it's time for EP Podcast Word on the Street, brought to you by Spoken Vine Wine Bar and Bottle Shop, northeast corner of 95th and Kedzie, with an incredible array of wines, great small plates, and entrees. It's perfect for date night, 21 and over. They will be on talking about the next big thing they're featuring on the next episode of the EP Podcast with Frank Murray of the Evergreen Park Library and Senator Bill Cunningham, scheduled to be on that show as well. See everything they have to offer at SpokenVineWines.com. The Village of Evergreen Park is currently hiring for several positions within the village. Go to their website for more details, but I see ice skating instructor part-time. Also part-time work for Meals on Wheels as a driver and a building attendant. If you're looking for work, it's here in the village. Early voting has begun in suburban Cook County, and the nearest early voting location is the Oak Lawn Public Library at 9247 Raymond Avenue in Oak Lawn. Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4. You can do voter registration in person. Just bring 2 forms of identification, one with a current address. Do not forget about the big Halloween parade this Friday, October the 25th, kicking off at 6 p.m. at James J. Sexton Park, 91st and Rockwell. It is going to be a fun night of activities with a pumpkin patch, pumpkin decorating, light refreshments, a Halloween movie on a big screen outside, a goodie bag, and a hayride. And it is open to all resident children up to 11 years old with a parent. The urban barn will also be open and the animals will be there to be seen. And the youth department is now accepting donations of coats, hats, socks, scarves, and gloves during their annual coat drive all the way through November the 30th. Donations may be new or in clean used condition. Drop them off at the Community Center at 3450 West 97th Street, Village Hall at 9418 South Kedzie. And you can contact the Youth Department with any questions at 708-229-3377. Our guests from the 2 school districts here in the Village of Evergreen Park continue to sit down here on the EP Podcast. So how do you guys determine how you're going to use the funding that you get off of the taxes? Like let's take District 124 that has multiple schools, 4 lower level schools, and then you got central middle school. So you've got a lot that you've got to pay for, a lot of staff and a lot of different locations. So how do you determine where the money is going to go after you get the property tax money?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think, at the end of the day, I think the most important thing that we do is provide high quality education to our students. And making sure that they are at the center of our budget is obviously at the core of everything that we do, along with our teachers, and making sure that they have a quality collective bargaining agreement and that we are able to provide for them so that they can provide for our kids. And when we engaged in a strategic planning process as a district, we received feedback from our community members, parents, teachers, students, and it was really driven on this concept of our goals. And so we align our budget to our goals and make sure that we are very strategic in how we make those decisions. And also when we receive grant funding, there are particular items to which we need to make sure are addressed appropriately that's aligned to state and federal mandates.
Is it something, because it adjusts, right? I mean, so you're getting an adjustment and then you're going to get some homeowners every once in a while that are going to go back and say, my house is not worth that much. So is it something where what's happening this year maybe takes a year or two to actually get to you? Or when do you find out the amount you're getting for this year?
Yes, it is based on the last year's tax increase. And so we receive the funding the following school
Takes a
year.
little while for it to be all sorted out and figure out what's going on. Okay, so District 231, and we'll go with somebody who's just sat down here with us and join us, Board of Education President Mary Zofkie. How are you?
Nice to be here, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So you are a parent who's probably had kids in these schools before.
Yes.
And you live here in Evergreen Park, and you're on this board.
Yes,
so,
I am.
Tell me a little bit about what you guys do to figure out what you're going to do with the money.
My predecessors on the school board in the early 2000s laid out a very detailed plan. Of course, educating our students is our priority, but we were also looking at an aging building, an aging facility, and things that needed to be changed. So in the early 2000s, the board laid out a plan. They prioritized projects that needed to be done, of course, the most needy up front, and set a budget based on those projects. The old-fashioned way. Okay, this is the first project we're going to tackle. This is how much it's going to cost. This is how we're going to save for it. And that's what 231 did. The board members at that time saved money and did not start a project until money was in the bank to pay for it in full. And that is what our plan has been the last 20 years. When I got on the board, we started these projects were going into full swing. And some of the things and some of the facilities that we have done renovations on and some of the initiatives that we have put into place are new football field and new track turf. We put in a new science labs. We put in a new cafeteria. We put in a new auditorium with state-of-the-art lighting and sound. We put in a new LRC, which is our Learning Resource Center. We have, we purchased the sports complex. We renovated our third floor into an indoor track because something as simple, you don't think about this, but our cross-country and track students in their preseason and training, they were running the hallways. Well, they're running on concrete floors.
Right.
It's destroying their feet and their shins. So now we have a surface that they can actually practice for their preseason without causing injuries to our students. Then some of the academics that we have done is the one-to-one device technology initiative. And we have maintained that with rotating new devices for all of our students. You know, because technology has become such an important part of education, you have to maintain that. That also boosts us up to our curriculums are no longer in textbooks. They're online. So you have to invest in that infrastructure for the current times on how kids are learning and teachers are teaching. And that whole technology initiative, we have planned that out and we've paid for it with cash. District 231 has not taken out any bond issues, borrowed any money, asked for any referendums to increase our levy in over 20 years. We've done it the old-fashioned way. We've saved and then done the project. Saved and then done the project.
I find that really an interesting point. As you're talking, I'm got questions running through my head, right? And I'm sitting there going, okay, that's great. I think that the campus over there is beautiful and grabbing the athletic facility and all that other stuff. That's all awesome stuff, right? But I noticed somebody listened to that and was like, well, what do they need all that for? Like, why do they have to have that? Why do they have to compete with all the schools that like they're, because the private schools are basically, you can see the competition, right? I mean, Brother Rice is putting a field in right now that seems to be a direct response to the one that's over at Evergreen Park High School. Like it's like, look at what they've got. We've got to keep up with the Joneses and everybody's doing that. But it's not like you go to the property tax people and say, we need more money because we have to build this. The money comes to you and then you're like, this is the amount that we have to use. Where do we best invest it? It's not like if you don't spend it, that it goes back to the property owners or they don't give you more the next year. This is something where you're getting the money. Now you're deciding how to use it best. And that makes a lot more sense.
It does. And also to that thought, we have in the last 7 years applied for a tax abatement grant.
Okay.
You have to qualify for it. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. But in the last 7 years, we have been granted that. And we have been able to abate back $8.3 million to the taxpayers in Evergreen Park.
Really?
Which you should be super proud of.
Yeah. I mean, so you are doing something that's helping out.
Yes.
Okay.
So we try very hard to spend our money responsibly. And then when there is something there we can do for the taxpayers of Evergreen Park, we try and give it back to them. You know, of course, our priority is to educate their children, and that is our focus. That is our number one priority. And that is something I am very proud of in Evergreen Park. Not only am I a taxpayer, I was a parent. My children went through 124, went through 231. I am also an employee of 124. So I am 100% invested in the education of the children in our community. And I'm going to work very hard to make sure our tax dollars are being spent responsibly.
It reminds me of something that Matt Dugan said on last week's show on the EP podcast, where he talked about one of the big things that he sees as important is he wants to give every kid in Evergreen the opportunity to not only do well, go to college, but to thrive when they go there. And those facilities and that extra technology and the fact that you guys are on the cutting edge on a few things, they need that, right? They should have AP classes and dual credit classes. And he was talking about the program where the younger kids in District 124, Jenna, he was talking about how like now he's got this program that gives them high school classes when they're younger, so that now when they enter high school, they're entering it like an honors level instead of trying to learn something else. And it accelerates them because, and I thought this was really interesting, he wants the kids to do so well that when they go to college, they're not spending that much money for college because their education, their grades and everything they have gets them more federal money and more grants, more scholarships, things like that. I think that's the thing that people probably don't understand about what you're doing because, I'll bring it up again. We're surrounded on three sides by a school district that you don't feel like their priority sometimes is the best for the kids and their advancement, where that you guys seem to have a different focus on what you're doing. I mean, it's really interesting. And Jenna, tell me a little bit here before we get out of here, just like some of the things that you're proud about with your schools in your district, especially with the things you've been able to use this money for over the last couple of years.
Sure. Just to piggyback off that too, is Mary was referring to our property tax relief grant. The elementary district did qualify, and we were also able to abate $3.3 million in property taxes to our community as well, which was obviously a high priority. I love this.
You guys are just giving money back.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
You're like, well, wait a second. We gave back money too. I love it.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, though, it's about making sure that we're being mindful of the financial outcomes of both the property tax payer and also making sure we're educating our children, and finding that happy, healthy balance is obviously critically important. It's important to every one of us sitting here today, and we want to make sure that we continue down that path. The district, as always, is committed to low class size, and it only supports our teachers. It only supports our kids. We've had a number of facilities upgrades, which I'm super proud of, because prior to my tenure, and I'm also going to give our Director of Finance, Eric Grossi, a big shout out, and of course the board. We have done a number of facilities upgrades, which includes HVAC and the opportunity to air condition actually Mary's building where she is located, and it just makes a big difference. Also cosmetic upgrades to both Southeast and Northeast that were just long overdue. And those were necessities. I mean, kids, when they come into their learning environment, they want to be in an inviting space, and it only increases the overall outcomes for kids. And the district is, in a current and financial position that they weren't previously in. And so when I started at Evergreen Park, along with the support of the Board of Education, we do an annual audit. And that audit is really important to the state's assessment of how we're doing in our overall financial health. And we currently are at a 3.9 rating out of a 4.0. The high school's at a 4.0. Trust me, I know that. And they should have, of course, be very proud of that. But we have increased our score from a 3.1 to a 3.9. And it's really about making sure, again, like Mary was saying, that you have enough cash on hand in the event of an emergency, and saving money in a school district is important because things happen that you can't predict. I'm sure Mr. Riordan has a number of stories of, how you just sometimes need money that you can't predict come up. And so you want to make sure that you're doing that in a very fiscally responsible manner. And then last but not least, it was a great day. One of the highlights of my career last year, we were able to give every teacher, every staff member at Evergreen Park a $500 winter bonus. And that was just amazing to give back to people and to demonstrate to our staff how much we appreciate their hard work and dedication to our community.
It's all about retention. I mean, if you're going to have teachers, it's a competitive thing. And so that makes an awful lot of sense to me. And Mary, Mike, I'm sure you have things to brag about with your school recently.
Well, to piggyback on Dr. Woodland and what you just said, Chris, the education industry right now is very difficult. The key is retention and high quality educators. And, that's everyone's goal, is to get the top educators in your school. And I am so impressed daily with the people at the high school and my colleagues in 124. and their commitment to the children of this community. And it pays off, because just a simple statistic last year, and we are in a unique situation because we are a one high school town and we only service Evergreen Park students. That there's only 2 districts in the whole state that does that. And it's us and the other EP, Elmwood Park, which is kind of funny.
You had me there for a second. I was like, the other EP.
We call ourselves
I'm like,
the
am I
2
supposed
EPs.
to know this one? Yeah, I didn't even realize that. Okay, Elmwood Park, Evergreen Park.
Yeah, they call us the 2 EPs,
Yeah.
and we only service children from our village. That's it. Whereas, other districts take from different areas. So last year, our graduation rate, and I am so proud of this, was 100%.
There you go.
Holy cow.
That's awesome.
And just some statistics, out of our graduating class last year, they were offered $16.5 million in scholarship money. We have 107 students that are attending a 4-year college this year. 81 are attending a 2-year college this year or some type of certification program. 1 student is attending a technical school. 20 students are attending trade schools, which I still consider college. They're still going to school. 13 students are going directly into the workforce, and 3 students have joined one of our branches of the armed forces. So that is something to be very proud of. We also received recognition this year for 2024, the AP Advanced Placement Honor Roll, and we got a bronze distinction. And that is based on the percentage of our students that are participating in AP level courses and the scores they are attaining at the end of the school year. Because any student in an AP class has to take an exam, standardized exam at the end of the school year. And depending on how they score, will give them college credit going into school. And, to a parent that is putting a child through college, not having to pay for 15 credit hours freshman year is a big savings.
Yeah, I got a kid in college right now. I understand that savings.
So that's I'm very proud that that's what we're doing for our kids. It's our goal to present every opportunity we possibly can for them to produce well-rounded young adults, not just academic prodigies. We need well-rounded people to run this world in the future. And that's what EP's philosophy is.
Listen, I think this is great. I mean, I thought this was a great idea. Again, Mike Riordan, I know Dr. Woodland, Jenna Woodland was helping out as well. But I mean, you were kind of my point on this thing when we kind of came up with the idea to do this. I think this is a great idea. I'm glad that you thought of it, because I learned a ton about how this all works.
It was certainly a team effort here, Chris. I don't want to take over.
Well, you hadn't talked in 15 minutes, and I was just trying to loop you into the conversation. I'm like, the poor guy was sitting here for 15 minutes. He's sitting in a stool. He's just watching everybody talk. I'm like, I just want to get him in before it's over. That was really it.
I appreciate.
I really want to give credit to everybody here, not just you.
I was trying to, But truly, this was a team effort. I mean, we knew that this was a concern within the community. When the tax bills came out late in the summer, we saw what was going on online and social media circles about people's tax bills. We actually had a gentleman come to our board meeting, express concern about his tax bill and how we were spending the money and so forth. And I think it was out of that genuine concern for our constituents that this idea was born. And we felt the need to tell a little bit of our side of the story, so to speak, but to make sure people understand that we are absolutely committed to being good stewards of the resources the community provides us. And it is absolutely centered on, and everybody here spoke to this, it is centered on what's best for these kids and setting them up for success to be good contributing members of society where they can live good, fulfilling, healthy, and happy lives moving forward. That's our job. And we do that through academics and athletics and activities and fine arts. All those academic and enrichment experiences build that well-rounded kid that Mary was talking about to be able to go on to great things after they're done with us.
That's awesome. And don't forget, as Michael Aumiller pointed out earlier, it's not their fault. It's the Cook County assessor. So just be mad at them.
No, Chris.
Just be mad at them. So anyway, again, to Michael, who was on here earlier, Mary that joined us midway through, Jenna and Michael, thank you all for coming down here and joining us, and look forward to more great things from your schools.
Thank you for having us so much.
It's the EP Podcast. All things Evergreen Park. It's the EP Podcast. Evergreen Park.